Bruchim Aboim B'Shem Irgin Shir. I'd like to welcome everyone to today's shiur from Rav Yakov Shlita on the topic of Neiros, Shabbos, and Yeshiva and camp. I have the great schus of sponsoring a shiur. Call Irgin Shir 718-851-8651 or email ist@yeshivanet.com. Rav Smith.
This past summer, because of COVID, I ended up in a different camp, a new camp for the first time, and a few different Rabbi that came together. And I remember the first Erev Shabbos, one Rabbi asked, "What's going to be with halachos Neiros in camp?" And I realized that's a good discussion for a shiur, the halachos of Neiros Shabbos in a yeshiva, in a dorm, in a dear Eretz Yisroel, in a camp. And I want to mention once and for all, when I say a yeshiva today, there's also the girls in seminary, whether it's out of town, in Eretz Yisroel. Is there a special chiyuv on a bochurim or a girl that's away from home? And also I have another question that I wanted to discuss. Someone told me his daughter got married, and the Shabbos Sheva bracha, someone told her to light in the hall where the Sheva brachas were, in the catering hall, and she was very surprised. She wanted to light in her apartment the first Shabbos, not to light at home. So basically it's pretty much an all-inclusive question of the halachos of Neiros Shabbos regarding someone, either a single bochur or girl in camp, or b'chal, the right place to light. So as our derech ways is, we have to try to find one yesod that will give us guidance for the whole sugya. And I think really we have to understand today is the following simple question. We are zeicha to many mitzvahs, Baruch Hashem. Many mitzvahs we call a chayvas haguf. A mitzvah of matzah. No one ever thought of saying if the father eats matzah, he's yotze the whole family. Chayvas haguf, everybody has to do. Mitzvah of tefillin, you can't have the father be moitzi the sons. Like a gadol once said, that saved Yiddishkeit, the chayvas haguf. Otherwise you would have the guy to do all the mitzvahs for you. Go on a 3-month vacation and the Yiddishkeit ayidei acha. So you can't do ayidei acha. Most mitzvahs is a chayvas haguf. Even kiddush, that many have the minhag, the father says, and no one else says kiddush. It's not pshat that the father's moitzi the children, the children are yotze with shemei ka'ina. They're also doing something. So it's very rare to find a mitzvah that someone could do for me. But then we have some mitzvahs that seem to be similar to that. I'll give you a mashal. You have a family, many children, and they have no mezuzah on the door. Who's mechuyev to put up the mezuzah? Everybody in the family? Man, women, and children? I don't think so. I mean, the Rosh Hashanah has to put it up. If there's no Rosh Hashanah, someone else has to do it. But can we say that the mezuzah or makkah, the mitzvah of makkah, is it a chayvas haguf on every single family member? When the father puts it up, so he has a mitzvah. I can't say it's a chiyuv on every single person. And then you have a very unique mitzvah called Ner Chanukah. Mi'ikad din, as we know, it's a chiyuv on men and women, boys and girls over bar mitzvah, bas mitzvah. But then again, mi'ikad din, the Gemara says Ner ishu be'isay, the father lights, and the children are all yotze, l'chatchila. By Svardim, that they don't have a mahadrin, you'll find a bocha Svardi, a heilige from a bocha, until he gets married, he didn't once light Ner Chanukah. That's the minhag of Svardim, Ner ishu be'isay. Very good, wonderful. So how you have a mitzvah that is a chayv on every single person, and only one does it. So the question is, how do we understand this mitzvah of Ner Shabbos? Is it like the Gemara refers to in Shabbos Chaf Alef Mabeis regarding Chanukah, Ner ishu be'isai? Rashi teaches, Ish v'chol b'nei be'isai, sagi lahu b'ner echad. Is it a combination? Chiyuv on everybody, but one person does it? Is it chiyuv only on the Rosh Hashanah? So the truth is, as we'll see, the resolution to this is the answer to all of our shaylas. So there's no doubt about it. Let me be very clear. Contrary to public opinion, Ner Shabbos has nothing to do with Nashim. The Machaba, Reish Samach Gimel Bey, is based on the Rambam. Echad Anoshim ve'echad Anoshim chayovim liyos bevateyem Ner Dolok b'Shabbos. The chiyuv Ner Shabbos is a chiyuv on men and women, boys and girls over higil l'chinuch of bar mitzvah age. You'll ask me why. Bishleim and Ner Chanukah is Persumei Nisa, so everybody should do it. But why is Ner Shabbos, the Gemara calls it Chayva, why is it a chiyuv on every single person? So the answer, like usually, is zil basa taima. What's taka the reason for this overwhelming chiyuv of Ner Shabbos? So the Gemara in Shabbos Chafayim Beis suggests the reason of shalom bayis. Now the truth is, when we have shalom bayis, we think about getting along with a spouse. But in this context, it lav dafka someone who's married. We'll soon see from the Mechaben Shulchan Aruch, even a bacha who's far away from his, or doesn't have a wife, or far away from his wife, has the chiyuv of Ner Shabbos out shalom bayis. So what does shalom bayis mean? So Rashi says, if the house is dark, v'nichshol be'etz v'evan. He's going to trip and fall and not enjoy Shabbos. This summer, Taka, we had a blackout for a day and a half, and I can tell you exactly what it means, no shalom bayis when it's dark. I'll have to with him. My wife was in the city at the time. But if you can't see where you're going, it's a very unpeaceful residence. Shalom bayis is more or less typed as domestic tranquility, as a peaceful existence. To live on Shabbos in a dark house is not what the Rebbeinu Shalom wants from a Yid on Shabbos. You have to enjoy Shabbos. So Shalom bayis means to live in a house that has light, so there won't be a chashash, you might trip or fall. That's the main reason of Ner Shabbos. Rashi, in the same sugya, Chafayim Beis, says another reason I'll cover Shabbos. Because a Suda Chashuva always has Neiros. You go to a bris, there's Neiros. A shul has Neiros. It's always an add distinction when you have Neiros. So Rashi learns that the Ner Shabbos is a covet for the Shabbos. Tosfos adds, not als covet Shabbos, als einik Shabbos. Because if you eat in a dark location, you don't enjoy the Suda. And a person that can't see doesn't get satisfied as quickly from food. So there are basically three reasons for Ner Shabbos. Either shalom bayis, again, lav dafka married, but there shouldn't be a concern of groping in darkness. Kavod Shabbos and einik Shabbos. If that we understand very well why Ner Shabbos is a chiyuv on every man, woman, and child. Because every man, woman, and child has the chiyuv of enjoying Shabbos. Kavod Shabbos, einik Shabbos, and shalom bayis applies to every single yid over the chiyuv of bar mitzvah. Now we understand echad ish ve'echad isha very good. So why do we see that the women seem to have a monopoly over the mitzvah? So that the Mechaber in Seif Gimel, the next Seif, explains. Although the chiyuv is on both men and women, but women, since they are mitzuyas bebayis, v'oisekes b'tzarchei abayis, basically they are constantly at home, and they're home at the right time, and they're constantly busy at home, they were honored with the mitzvah. You know, the man is running around making mincha. I always say some men during Hadlakas Neiros are underwater. They're in the mikveh someplace. You can't light them, and until he gets out, there's going to be a whole frenzy. So we don't need men that are nervous and tense, running to catch mincha, shkia. Let the women do it. They're home. They're more tranquil, and that's the right mitzvah. L'maisa, we see azoivait that the Mishnah says in Shabbos, Lamed Aleph and Beis, one of the reasons that an Isha dies during childbirth is because they're not careful with Neiros Shabbos. So even though b'yisoid the mitzvahs on men and women have a very strong hold on the mitzvah of Ner Shabbos. In fact, it's interesting, the Siddur Yaibitz writes, if a man decides to preempt his wife and he chaps the mitzvah of Ner Shabbos and does without her consent, he has to pay her 10 zehuvim, because you chapped someone else's mitzvah. Now, I don't advise the wife should demand the money, because that's the very opposite of shalom bayis. It's a little counterproductive. But b'yisoid, that's how much the mitzvah belongs to women. I'll give you another mashal. Let's say a woman, in a Gutta Eifen's in a hospital, she had a baby, and the first Shabbos she's still in the hospital, and the father's home with his teenage daughters. Who lights then? So the Pais can say then the father should light. He's more of an Ikka Habayis than his daughters. Let's say the father and mother went away and left the children home, then the girls have precedence over the boys. But beside the mitzvahs on men and women equally. How does it work? This concept. If we're saying the mitzvah of Ner Shabbos is echad anoshim ve'echad noshim, is a chayvas guf on every single yid. So how does it work that the mother lights and they're all yotza? Again, bishloima kiddush by listening to yotza. But here, as we'll see, there's no chiyuv to be home when the mother lights. So how are the rest of the family yotza? And I'll tell you, I saw a Mavel Dicker, Rabbi Tam, in Sefer Yosha, Simon Memches, see if caught involved. The interesting shayla, someone said that there's no chiyuv to make a bracha on Ner Shabbos. So Rabbi Tam wrote him back, you know why you think so? Because you never heard your wife make the bracha, because typically we're never there. And then he adds and he says, Miyamai lo shamati, I never heard my wife make the bracha on Ner Shabbos. Because you're not there. So Rabbi Tam said in his lifetime he never was there when his wife lit licht. So the shayla is, how could you be yotza? If you're there, maybe you're part of it. But how is a husband who's in shul, davening mincha, whatever, getting ready, how is he yotza with the chayvas haguf? So that's the unique concept of Ner Shabbos. How is mi'ikad din all the children yotza when the father lights Ner Chanukah? Well, halacha, they don't have to be home. But that's the uniqueness of Ner Chanukah. Mitzarecha, there's a chiyuv on every single person to light Neiros Chanukah. But there's a mitzvah, the tzuras mitzvah is Neiros Shubeisai. The same identity applies to Ner Shabbos. Both features coexist. Chayvas haguf, every single person mechuyev, but you yotze with one hadlaka. It's not shlichus. There's no shlichus by a chayvas haguf. If the father eats matzah, the children are not yotze. Agam the Rab in Sivkot and Beis and Kunjasachim uses a lashon shluchai. His zikr doesn't mean a real shlichus. The concept is a chiyuv on every person to make sure there's a ner that's burning. He doesn't have to do it physically, but it has to be done. If you'll ask me why that is so, I'll say zil basa taima. Since the reason is Shalom Bayis, Kavod Shabbos, Einik Shabbos, why should I think every single person has to light themselves? As long as the Suda is being held in a place that's well lit, the lighting of the mother exempts all people. You'll say, wait a second. If we're comparing Ner Shabbos to Ner Chanukah, so for us Ashkenazim, there's a big kasha. Because by Ner Chanukah, all the boys light Al Mahadrin. Why doesn't that apply by Ner Shabbos if we're comparing Ner Chanukah and Ner Shabbos? Zok the Rab in Kunjasachas Sivkot and Hey, the chiluk is pashit. Really, there's no reason to light 5 Neiros Shabbos. Once you have light, you have enough light. Ner Chanukah is different because it's Persumei Nisa. And the more Persumei Nisa, the better. But Ner Shabbos, once you have enough Neiros, you're good to go. What do you have to have more people lighting? So Ner Shabbos is like Ner Chanukah with one exception. There is no Mahadrim in a Mahadrim. Now I should mention, now you'll understand a little better perhaps what the Magen Avram writes in the beginning of Reish Samach Gimel, is that you're supposed to light in every room. Why don't we do that today? Because in every room we have lights, either in the room itself or you have from the hallway, so there's no concern of Shalom Bayis. I covered an Einik Shabbos, you have that in the dining room. But basically, Zil Basa Taima. I'll tell you, I saw a chiddush that I never saw before. There's an old question, if a kala, the first Shabbos that she lights Neiros, does she make a shechiyanu on the mitzvah of Neiros? So this is really a sugan yeredeya chav ches beis, that the shach paskins, if you do a mitzvah the first time you shech, there's no shechiyanu. Why? Because it's not a seasonal lazman hazeh, it's once in a lifetime. But the Ramah Taka seems to hold the first time you do a mitzvah, you have to make a bracha shechiyanu. So like the Ramah, why doesn't the kala make a shechiyanu? So I just saw this week in the Magdanas Eliyahu, Chelik Alf Simon Tzadik Alf, he says, it's not the first time she's been mekayim the mitzvah of Ner Shabbos. Since she's 12 years old, she did it. She didn't do it physically, but she got credit with her mother's hadlaka. So you'll say, wait a minute, so when she's 12, she should make a shechiyanu. She's not doing it physically, there's no shechiyanu. So here you see how beautiful the sugya is, and the Aruch HaShulchan in Sif Hey writes, Ner Shabbos ke Ner Chanukah. Shu mitzvah chayva kol echad lahadlik b'hainu shekol hamishpacha chayavas b'halachos neiros, but one person exempts than all. If you look at the Rambam, it's noteworthy in Hilchos Brachos Yud Aleph Beis. He has a whole list of chayvas haguf, tefillin, sukkah, lulav, and shaifa, and then a list of the Rabbanon's Chayvas Haguf, Megillah, halachos Ner Shabbos, halachos Ner Chanukah. So he's definitely considering Ner Shabbos a mitzvah on every single person. But that's the unique blend of Ner Shabbos, like Ner Chanukah, Chiyav on every single person. But if there's a different hadlaka that you're part of, you're Yotze with that. This will explain another chiddush that I saw in the Sefer Orcha Shabbos, on Kuf Pei Aleph. Let's say you know your neighbor is stuck in traffic Friday afternoon, and they might not get back in time. And you have the access to the house, so you go into the house without asking them, without telling them, and you light Ner Shabbos for them. So the Orcha Shabbos says you're not Yotze the mitzvah, they're not Yotze the mitzvah of Ner Shabbos. They didn't do anything. And you, not, if you're a shliach, so a shliach might help, but you're not even a shliach. If you call them and they're mamana you a shliach, fine. Because the point is, there has to be, it's a din on the bias, you're not part of the bias. Now I want to just add to this, to bring a more geschmack, the Rav in Reish Samach Gimel Yud Aleph. So let's say a woman was delayed Erev Shabbos, and she looks at her watch and she's horrified, it's ready after this man. Whatever this man is, but it's after this man. So you can't light after this man. So the Rav Paskin, she could call a guy, because since it's still bein hashmashes, you could have a guy do malacha deraisa, and the guy would light Neiros, and the Rav says that the Isha can make a bracha. Now most places can argue on that prat, make a bracha. How could you make a bracha and a guy hadlaka? And we don't pass him like the Rav in that respect, but the Rav was the Rav, and the Rav says that the guy could light and the Isha can make a bracha. How you talking? But for us it's masik midvash. Because the mitzvah is not so much the Maisa mitzvah, it's the Taitzah. There should be Neiros burning. Kavod Shabbos, Einik Shabbos, Shalom Bayis, Zil Basatayma. So the Rav holds it's so much of a Maisa mitzvah for the Isha that even without her doing anything, a bracha could be said. Contrast that to someone, a neighbor lights in your house without shlichus, that is no shaychus. So to Rabbi say, this is the yesod of the mitzvah, this unique mitzvah of Ner Shabbos. It's sort of a pshara. It's a chayvas aguf, but one per family is good enough. You know what it's like? It's like Erev Tafshilin. Nobody could light, nobody could cook without an Erev Tafshilin, but one per family. That's basically the mitzvah of Ner Shabbos. And again, this highlights the unique status of Ner Shabbos. Now, let's talk tachlis. A bacha is in yeshiva, he's in the dormitory, or boy or girls in camp. Where are they Yotze the mitzvah of Ner Shabbos? So one thing we find, and this is very neges, I'll read the Lashon. Shabbos Chav Gimel Amar Aleph, Zok the Gemara, Amar Abzeira. Mireish Ke'avine Beirav, when I was a bacha, a single bacha learning in yeshiva, Mishtatafna Befriti Bahade Ushpizia. They didn't have dormitories, they had what we call stancias. He was a boarder in someone's house. Now, obviously he was poor, whatever the case was, he didn't light himself, but he chipped in with the balabas that he stayed by, and it was Yotze the mitzvah of Ner Shabbos, Ner Chanukah, I'm sorry. We'll soon see what that means, Mishtata Bepruta. But he's talking about for the 8 days of Chanukah, he was in stancia, he was staying in someone else's house, and he chipped in Ner Chanukah with the balabas. Basa Dinasiva, it's when he got married, now that I have a wife, I don't have to do even that. Madliki alai begav beisai. Apparently, he went back to yeshiva with the same stancia, but he didn't light any. He wasn't even mishtata bepruta. Why? Because his wife was Yotze him in the mitzvah. Now, this is surprising. Rabbi Zeira didn't light Ner Chanukah. The Teretz says he was Yotze with his wife. But what about Mahadrin? He wasn't as firm as us. The Teretz, that's the special chiddush of Ishtik Gufay. If in my house the wife lights, that's me. Just like if the husband lights, the wife doesn't make Mahadrin. Why is she different than her boys? The Teretz is an Ishtik Gufay. But the question is, Abzer was far from home, presumably, he went to learn. This is Madlikin Alai Begav Beisai. If in my house there's Ner Chanukah, I'm Yotze. Even if the wife lit, the husband is Yotze. And indeed, that's the halacha. If a husband or a wife are away from home when they light Chanukah licht, or any of the children, if the father lights, or the mother lights could be, the whole family is Yotze the mitzvah of Ner Chanukah. Oy bazoi, why can we say the same applies to Ner Shabbos? If the mother lights, the family are Yotze. They don't have to be home. We proved earlier, Rabbeinu Tam wasn't home. As long as there's a Neiros burning in the house, all the family is Yotze. If the son's in shul, he's Yotze. If the son goes to Lakewood for Shabbos, is he Yotze with the mother's adlaka? Why not? And now that the boy went to a dorm and he's there for a few weeks, why is he no longer part of the family? But the big question is, if the boy or girl goes away for a long period of time, he relocates. Lamashal, he goes to a Eretz Yisroel or seminary, or he goes to a dorm and he's there from after Sukkot until Pesach, like used to be. Maybe he's not part of the family. And indeed, the Aruch HaShulchan in Sif Hey, all this Reish Samach Gimel, he says a bacha that goes to learn Chutz Lebeisai, he has to light Ner Shabbos wherever he is. The hezbollah seems to be, since he went away for so many months, he's mufka from his family. Now, of course, he's part of the family. When he comes home for Bein Hazmanim, he's Yotze with his mother. But if he's away for so many months indefinitely, he is no longer part of the family. You'll say, wait a second, what about Reb Zera? Why is Reb Zera Yotze in Ner Chanukah? He was away from his home. The teretz is Reb Zera was Ishtei Kegufay. Ishtei Kegufay is never severed, is never disconnected. But a child has to be part of the family. And Taka, I saw the Shmir Shabbos in Memhei Yud Aleph says the bochurim that goes and lives in a dormitory, or girls in a seminary dormitory, if they're there for a long period of time, they are not Yotze with their mother's hadlaka that's back home. Now, again, as I said, when they come back, of course they're Yotze during Bein Hazmanim, they're not out of the family. And a husband and wife has a stronger relationship and it's never severed. But a child, a boy or girl in yeshiva, if they go away for a longer period of time, and that's what seems all the paiskim are maskim. But the question is, what about today in Tafshin Pei Aleph? My Shver Zechon Lebracha went to learn yeshiva for 2 years straight. In this 2 years, he didn't, Pesach was not by his family. I heard someone said, tells the boys got bar mitzvah in yeshiva. They didn't go home. They had a masifta, started young. You don't go home during Gizman. Today, I don't know if the Olam knows, in yeshiva, every 4 weeks there's a off Shabbos, and if the nephew's up Sharon, or the nephew's Shalom Zacha, or Stam, he wants to chill, or something like that. The kid he's home, he's not there too indefinitely. I mean, he's pretty much, anchored at home and in the yeshiva. But maximum, once in 4 weeks, he's back home. So it seems that would still connect him to his home. If he doesn't go away for such a long period of time, I don't know the exact cloud, but if every 4 weeks he's home, the Shabbos Mevarchim, he's back home, so he's still home. What the Aruch HaShulchan was talking about, like a Zera's type of person that didn't go home every so often. So a bacha in a dorm, unless again he's in Eretz Yisroel, in seminary, or in yeshiva that he's away for months, is still probably Yotze with his mother. Now, the question then is, does that mean that Taka there's no chiyuv to light in the yeshiva? Or let's say he wants to light in yeshiva because there are so many boys that spending a Shabbos, it's just very strange. So the emes is in Taf Reish Ayin Zayin, Sif Gimel, the Mechaber says even though someone is Yotze with his family's hadlaka, if he's Mechaber not to be Yotze with them, so he has a chiyuv and he can light with a bracha. Well, how does that work? Are you Yotze with the family? So the Maril in the Tshuvah says, because you have Kavanah Shalei Lotzei, says good enough. Shumas Hadeshin in Siman Kuf Aleph says, because Persume Nisa is a great mitzvah and you could not be Yotze with family. What's the nafkamina of these two reasons? Regarding their Shabbos, where there's no Persume Nisa. Light the Maril, if you have Kavanah not be Yotze, so you take a chayv even on Erev Shabbos. Like the Trumas Hadeshin, it's a Pesumei Nisa, then it doesn't work by Erev Shabbos. But the Mishtabura quotes only the Maril, as the Ramah does, and it seems very clear. Even if someone is Yotze with his Bnei Habayis, if he's in a different location and wants to light his own Neiros, he could have in mind not to be Yotze with the Rosh Habayis, the mother of the lights, and he could light with a bracha where he is. And the emes said this is Pashat Minig Yisrael. a daughter has a baby, moves back home to her parents, and she's there for a while. She's technically part of the hadlaka of the mother. She's living there for quite a while, but every girl wants the light, as long as they're married. Yotze with the mother. Teretz, you have a mind not to be yotze with the mother. And this taka works. But to apply this more specifically, we have to learn an extremely important Mordechai in Shabbos Siman Reish Tzadik Daled that the Shulchan Aruch in Reish Samach Gimel Vav quotes. But listen to an interesting lashon. Bochurim ahalchem lilmoid chutz lebeisam, and note the word bacha. A bacha sounds like a boy. A single boy goes to learn. Tzricha lahadik ner shel Shabbos b'chedron ulevarech alav. If he has his own room, he has to make a bracha and light in his room. Mishum dalok is ner Shabbos chayva. Mishum shalom bayis shelo yikashel be'etz oy be'evan. A bacha has his own room, has to light out shalom bayis. Very interesting. And what about kavod reinik Shabbos? So let's go weiter. Avol mishu eitzel ishtoi. If l'chara this bacha, that's what it sounds like. It's a connection. If he's by his wife, ein sarach lahajik b'chedrei ulevarach alav lefisha ishtoi mevarachas olav. If this bacha is with his wife, he doesn't have to make a bracha. Now, pasach bekad v'sayim b'chavis. You start off with a bacha, end up with a younger man. So you look in the Oilas Shabbos, Tosfos Shabbos, Pri Megadim, Chayodim, Bialacha, all say that the Shulchan Aruch is talking about one and the same younger man. If he's home, he's Yotze with his wife. That's the second half. But let's say this younger man goes away to learn for an extended period, like Reb Zera. Now he's basically living alone. You'll ask, why can't he be Yotze with his wife? Madlikin alai begav beisoi. That's the key word. The one word is bechedroi. If he has his own room, apartment, zokte bi'alach, and now he has a chayvas habayis. There are two chiyuvim zokte bi'alach. He has a chayvas haguf, and that his wife exempts him. But if he has his own apartment that's dark, and there's no kavod Shabbos, no einik Shabbos, and no shalom bayis, because shalom bayis applies even to a single person. How is he yotze the chayvas habayis? He's in a house that's the astira to the kedusha Shabbos. So zokti bi'alacha, it seems that there are two chiyuvim. Chayvas haguf that every single yid has, you yotze with the mother, with the wife. But if you're in a person that is yotze with his mother or his wife, but he is in a home now that is lacking shalom bayis, Gevald, you have a chayvas haguf. So now everything fits in. It's all talking about a younger man. Now why you call him a bacha? In English they a summer bachelor. So he's a winter bachelor. Remember when I was in Yeshiva, there was older bacha that got married, big masmidim. So they said, what happened when he got married? From a bacha, he became a bacha with a refrigerator. That was a nice way of saying with a wife, a more tzniasdik. But in other words, he was the same master, learning 24/7, but he has a wife now. No, halavai. Rabbi Zera is also like that. Rabbi Zera went away and he was like a bacha. So the Mechabe's bacha, the Mordechai's bacha, all the paiskim say is a married person. But he's away from home. He still yotze his chayvas haguf with his wife, but not the chayvas habayis. And that's why it's so meduyik that he chaps on al shalom bayis. Because really he's eating by someone else, and by the Suda he has light. But when he's staying in his room, there's no shalom bayis. And that's the yesod of the bi'alacha. There's a chiyuv bayis and a chayvas haguf. Typically when a person lives at home, he has both in one. But when someone's away, he might have a chayvas habayis. Now let's learn Siv Zayin, and we'll apply this lemaisa. Zokt Mechaber, the next Siv, Oireyach, she'ein lo yichedem miyuchid. He's taka independent, he's a single. But he doesn't have his own room. V'gam ein madlikin alav beveisai, tzarech l'shtatei b'pruta. Why does he have to mishtate pruta? Because he has a chiyuv. Why does he have a chiyuv? He has a chayvas haguf. Because again, he doesn't have a wife. Who's maitzim? So based on this, we see that there is two chiyuvah and each one is mechayiv. So a married person is yotze with his wife. But if he's in a place that has its own chiyuv, avadi has to light. Now let me ask you an interesting question. Let's say a single person shouldn't be doing this, but he camps out on Shabbos and he has no bias, but he's eating in a tent, whatever it is. Or maybe he's eating outside the Tachas Kippur HaShemayim, an interesting fellow. So in there, Chanukah he has no chiyuv because there's no bias. But on Shabbos he would have a chiyuv because he's eating in a place of darkness and he has a chiyuv out the reasons of Shabbos. So it's not, again, it's similar to Ner Chanukah, but it's a chayvas habayis and a chayvas haguf. Either one is mechayiv. Now, one thing I want to mention before we apply this more specifically, let's say he's eating in someone's house and he has wonderful lights. Where he's staying, there's also lighting. There's a light in the hall and he has access in the bedroom. He has what they call a Shabbos lamp and he could use light. He's not in the darkness. Then there's no chayvas habayis. The light's been going on, it's been on since Friday morning. You didn't put it on the covered Shabbos. It makes no chilik. As long as where you are now, you have access to light, you have no chsar and shalom bayis. Chayvas haguf, he's yotze with his wife, or it can be yotze b'shtat bruta with the family. So this chayvas habayis is only when it's pitch black, literally. And I must say today in our society, it's very rare that a person stays in a place that it's pitch black. I mean, even if the room is nice and dark, so you can sleep at night, but lemaisa, you could open the door, there might be street lights, it's not dark enough that the existence is nikoshel be'etz ve'evan. This is extremely noigeya, and I'll give you the first mashal, a bochurim in a yeshiva. Let's say they go every Shabbos mevarchim, and they're yotze with their mothers. Do they have to light in the yeshiva? So the answer is technically the yotze with their mothers. But what kind of Shabbos is going to be? You have a few hundred b'nei Torah eating in a dining room. There's no Ner Shabbos. Now I can't say it's they're not yotze, but where's the covered Oynik Shabbos that only Neiros could do? Now I know the dining room is well lit, but there's a certain aura, there's a certain ambiance that Neiros Shabbos bring that no light in the world could accomplish. Do you feel Shabbosdik when there's Neiros Avada? You're eating a Shabbos food, there's no Neiros at all. So, manishtana from a Tuesday night supper. The Neiros Shabbos do what all the light can do. So there's no chesaron of shalom bayis because it's well lit. But how do you eat a Shabbos food without Neiros? So they want to light Neiros. But l'mayis they were yotze with their mother because they live close by. So then we'll use the maril that I mentioned. You have kavanah not to be yotze with their mother. And indeed, they can make a bracha in yeshiva based on that alone. And that's taka the minig in yeshivas. Someone lights and ziyotze the entire yeshiva. The same is true in a camp, boys camp or a girls camp. No chilik. Even if technically they yotze with their mother because they're only there for a few weeks, but to spend the whole Shabbos in a yeshiva or a camp and there's no Ner Shabbos is lacking. Now, typically in a camp, there's usually a rebbetzin or some director's wife, something along these lines that lights, and that brings the covered Shabbos and Oynik Shabbos the entire camp. Now, you'll say, but I have nothing to do with it. I didn't chip in. You don't have to chip in because you have a chiyuv, you yotze the chiyuv with your mother. So basically, it could be also you did chip in by paying tuition. You get room and board, and part of room and board is not just the meals, but Ner Shabbos. So you have a shtickle chelik in the Neiros. But the point I want to bring out is that there are two independent chiyuvim. And in a camp or yeshiva, even if you yotze with the mother, you might want to light Neiros, out covered Oynik Shabbos, and that you could do with a kavanah shalei lotzes. What's in both yeshivas that I'm zeichet to be in, we have this interesting shayla. The bochurim stay in the dorm, and they eat and sleep in the dorm, and because there's an overabundance of talmidim, they have to rent what we call diras. We want to get them ready for Eretz Yisroel life. They rent for them apartments, full apartments, and the bochurim stay. So first week they move into the apartment. Do we have to light Neiros? They're not in the building with the dorm. They're around the corner. Could be a block away. Dira sounds like Ner Shabbos. You have to light. So really, the truth is, you think about it, where do they eat? They don't eat in the dira. They eat in the dining room. It's one kitchen. So just like in a camp, you think about it. In a camp, a person's bunkhouse could be a nice distance from the dining room. So how are you yotze? The teretz is what's the problem? Where you're eating this Neiros? Yes. Your bunkhouse is lit enough that there's no yikashel be'etz ve'evan? Yes. So what's the problem? So what's the chilik if the boys have a dira a block away? The makam achila, this covered Oynik Shabbos, they yotze with that. and they get home, this is not a problem. And that's why mitzad adin, a dira is not a mechayiv for adlakas neiros. We'll soon see Eretz Yisroel dira is a different story. But I don't think there's any much of a more of a chayiv in this dira. The only thing is, I asked them, do you feel a little umatik, a little down, a little depressed? You're in a house, a full house with a dining room and a living room, and there's no neiros. So if they feel that there's something lacking, then you could have kavanah shaloi latzes and light in the dira. But I told them two very important tonight. The first more important than the second, and that is you have to have rishus from the either yeshiva or the balabas or both. They might not want to leave neiros unattended because you're not going to be there. So if there's no rishus, then it's not a mitzvah. I told the boys, if you like, when you're not allowed to, it's the darkest neiros in the world. It's called a mitzvah b'aveira that just darkens the world. So if they don't have rishus, if the yeshiva says don't light there, or the balabas don't light there, then don't light there. Be yaitz lechatchila with the yeshiva. If you have rishus, then you have to worry about another problem. You're lighting before mincha, understandably, right? So you're not makabel Shabbos with the adlaka. So when you have hanah from the Neiros, you light 3-hour Neiros, and you're running to mincha. Even if you want to have a hanah now, but you didn't wear makabel Shabbos yet, it's not Shabbos for you, right? Because you're first davening mincha, so you can't have Shabbos. So you're gonna not makabel Shabbos, daven mincha, and then a suda, and there's a seder, and you come home, there's no zeich of the Neiros. So that's what we call the bracha v'atola. You lit Neiros on Friday before Shabbos, there's no hanah on Shabbos. So if you want to do it, you have to do it right. So basically what I told them is either you get longer neiros that will last. If you want to be a little more careful, you put on the lights that you're keeping on Shabbos in the dining room or living room, whatever it is, and then you light the neiros. You have in mind that the mitzvah is going on both. So then even if the neiros burn out, the fact that the light is burning and that's giving covered and einik Shabbos and shalom bayis. So b'diavad, even though some don't like making a bracha on electricity, but in this context, you're making a bracha on the Neiros. So that's always a good idea. Rather, if anybody's living alone, a single, and he typically eats out, and he lights in his apartment before Shabbos. So very often you get back after the Suda, and the Neiros burnt out. This is a wonderful eitzah. You put on the lights, light the Neiros, and then when you come home, certainly at least the light is still burning, so you have some form of hanah from the Neiros. But basically, again, a dorm is typically, even a dir is not mechuyev. It's just if they want to create a chiyuv, that would be acceptable. A bacha asked me, he's going to visit a different yeshiva for Shabbos. He's staying in that yeshiva. How's he yoytza halakas neiros? So there are a few ways. Either with his mother, because again, he's not mufka from the har mitzvah. Or I told him, obviously you ask rishus to be in the yeshiva, I'm sure, right? You're allowed to take a coffee. Part of your room and board that you ask rishus for is the neiros. So however, the other bacha that live in the yeshiva yoytza, you are part of the same kitchen, the same bayis for Shabbos, and you're zicha yoytza with them. Now, what's important, a bacha in Eretz Yisroel, presumably he might have his own chiyuv. Especially in the olden days, that a dira mean you had to fend for yourself. The yeshiva didn't give meals, so he was mamash like a independent balabas. He's too far from his mother because again he's away for many months. So that might be somewhat of a chiyuv of a chayvas haguf and a chayvas habayis, and that makes sense. But really, to know us a little better, we have to learn another mechaba, because the question is as let's say a bacha in a dira in Eretz Yisroel. He has a real chiyuv adlakas neiros, but he's eating out this Friday night. Can he be yoytza where he's eating? Regarding Chanukah, it's mefurish in Shulchan Aruch, beferish. Regarding Chanukah, by eating in someone's house for one night, you can't light it and you can't be yoytza with the halachah. You're not a bnei abayis. That's pashit kipshutai. You can't be yoytza just overnight. Okay, Mr. Brewer says you're supposed to be there 7 days. Okay, the belt is makel. If you go for Shabbos, it's enough. But it's time to fall in for a suda, you're not part of the bnei abayis. Zok the Torah Shabbos in Reish Samach Gimel Yud Gimel, and I saw Rabbi Yashva's quote in Shvus Yitzchak Yudalet Aleph. The same applies to Ner Shabbos. If you're eating in someone's house Friday night, even though you're enjoying the Neiros and looking at the Neiros, you're not part of his family just for Friday night Suda, and you can't be yoytza with that Neiros. However, from the Rab in the end of Sif Tes, and again in Sif Tes Vav, and I saw that the Shmir Shabbos and Mem Hey Lamed Beis and Mechaz Yitzchak and Chelik Yud, Simon Chav Sif Katan Aleph also says this. Could be Ner Shabbos even if you're there just for a Friday night Suda, you Yotza with the Balas Habayis. Man Ishtana Chanukah from Ner Shabbos. For us it's Masig Midvash. Because the mitzvah of Ner Chanukah is an emes and Ner Ishu Beisai. And you're not part of the Bnei Abayis just for Friday night Suda. So you can't be Yotza. But I saw the Migdanis Eliyahu Aleph Tzad Gimel quotes what the Oz Midbar wrote to him a tshuva to this question. But Ner Shabbos is the Ikka de Suda. Shalom Bayis, Kavod Shabbos, Oynik Shabbos, the Ikka de Suda should be in a place that you enjoy. If B'Shas Suda, you're eating there, L'gabi Ner Shabbos, it's enough. Even if Ner Chanukah, it's not enough. And Taka the Shvutz Yitzchak and Amud Kuf Ayin Tes, the Chayva Sadar and Arlam Betes all say this Yisoid. Even though we do compare Ner Shabbos to Ner Chanukah, but in this respect, eating Friday night is enough for Ner Shabbos and you Yotze with the Balas Habayis. So therefore we could say, if someone for some reason couldn't light in his dira, he's eating out by family, he would be Yotze with that family. If he wants to be chayshiv for the shitas that I mentioned, Torah Shabbos and others, you have to be there more than just Friday night. There's a simple eitzah, and that's be mishtatef בפרוטה. We'll soon see the details. But if he chips in with the balas habayis, with the balabayis, then he's zicha yotza, even if he's not part of the bnei habayis. We had the shayla, the mesif, the bochurim, that not in dormitory, went away for Shabbos, and they got there. What do we do about Neiros? So again, they yotze with their mothers, it's not a problem, and usually there's a rebbetzin that comes and lights in the dining room, so she's, again, the same cheshbon, she's yotze the entire oilam, not just because I have me in mind, but it's a din in the bayis, and the bayis has an adlaka. A few bochurim asked me if they went away for Shabbos. I said, any parents there? No. So first I said, I don't advise that. Bochurim going for Shabbos alone, they should have a little of hashgach, but anyhow, lamaisa, if taka, they have mothers within the city. I mean, even Lav Dafka city, the mothers are lighted their yaitza. Again, here I would say that if they're eating alone and they have mamish no lit neiros on the table, it's missing a lot in the Kavod Shabbos and Oynik Shabbos. So the eitzah would be, I told them to have in mind not to be yaitza with their mothers, and then they have a regular chiyuv chayvas haguf, and they might even have a chayvas habayis. And again, if it's safe and there's no problem, they could light with the bracha where they are. A group of bochurim went away to an oifruf for Shabbos, and they're staying in someone's basement, and they're eating by the Baal Simcha. So I told them you yotze with at least 2 cheshbainis. First of all, with your mother, because again you're still part of the family that weren't dorm, that were mufka, and also you're eating by the Baal Simcha, so that you're a guest by him. Now the only thing is, if lamaisa the Baal Simcha is not eating at home, he's eating in a hall, and the Baal Simcha lights in his house. So So then we would say you could be yotze with the mother, or if they feel very a little bit missing in Shabbos, they're in a basement, there's no Neiros burning, then you can use the same cheshbon I told you earlier. They can have mind not to be yotze with the mother, and they can lie tak in the basement if it's safe with rishus, and make a bracha, because now they have a chayvas haguf, because they had mind not to be yotze with their mother. Now, what I saw a big chiddush, just to mention it, in the newly printed Sefer Orcha Shabbos Amud Kuf Samaches, he says, let's say a bach is in yeshiva, and the yeshiva typically gives meals, and he's yotze with the yeshiva's halachos neiros. But one Friday night he eats out by someone else. So he says you can't be yotze with the yeshiva if you're not there Friday night. Why? Because the ikalam is madlikan alai begav beisoi. That's the get to husband and wife. But yeshiva bach is not beisoi. Now, I don't understand, because if you become a kviyas in the yeshiva, you lost your citizenship at home because you're a kviyas in yeshiva, and you're yotze with the yeshiva, and it's one family, so one Friday night you lose your shaykhs. It's lav dafka bayis. It's a big chiddush to me. I met Rav Forsheim yesterday, and I asked him, he said, he doesn't understand. Once you are part of the yeshiva, and you're typically yotze with the yeshiva, there shouldn't be a chiluk if one Friday night you go away. Just like it's lav dafka husband and wife that we have this cheshbon. If you're kavu in the yeshiva, that should be good enough. A few do's and don'ts about being yotze. So first of all, I want to make a point which is pashit. Whenever a bochur is mechuyev, he's mechuyev. He can't just do it a little bit zeichel achorban. It has to be done kalacha. Lamashal, he's in Eretz Yisroel and he has his own dira, he has to know what to do. So first of all, I always tell the bochurim you have to know that the women do it different than you do it. Because the women typically when they light Neiros, they're makabel Shabbos. So you can't make the bracha and then light, because once you made the bracha, you makabel Shabbos. So they light first and then they make the bracha. But you, since you're davening mincha, or whatever reason you're not being makabel Shabbos, you have the option of doing the way it should be done of oivel asiyasa. Make the bracha, light, and then go daven mincha and makabel Shabbos whenever you can. Also, the waving of the hands, which the women do, that's the Ramah says, only because Reish Samach Gimel Beis, because you don't want to have anah until you actually, made the bracha. But if you're making the bracha first, you don't have to wave your hands. Just basically light, make the bracha, and light. What's the right place to light when a person's making taka bracha, when it's taka being yotze the mitzvah? So the Ramah in Reish Samach Gimel Yud says, "B'derech klal the mokem achila is the better place to light." Why? Pasha zil basatayma, kavod Shabbos, einik Shabbos, even shalom bayis. You have more light where you eat. Now, the emphasis, that's why in typically homes we light on the dining room table. That's the right place. The only question is, like I began with a kala, the first week she's lighting, she wanted to light at home, her apartment. No, told light in the hall. I think that was the wrong psak. Because in a hall, you have many other people lighting. It's a shayla beis gemal batim b'chlal. If you allowed to make a bracha, we're makel. But also, that's that doesn't add what she could add in her own apartment. Her apartment the first week has no neiros. Mokem achil is the ikka. True. That's if you in your house, either the dining room or a different room. But if you have a house without neiros or a hall that has 50 other sets of neiros, certainly the home is a better choice. The same thing in a hotel or camp. If someone, again, big if they allow you to light in the room, which typically they don't because of the chashash of a fire, but if they allow you to light in the room, avada light in a room, that's better than lighting downstairs with so many people. Especially, typically hotels tell you to light it in some back room, and they make it very safe, so safe you can't even see the Neiros, which means you don't enjoy the Neiros. In a camp also, they tell you light in a corner. If there's no hana from the Neiros, then you have to think if that's the right place to light. So the camp where we go to, they made a special, like a shelf, high enough that people could see and see by the Suda. Also high enough that the children can't play with. But if you light in any public place, camp, yeshiva, or a catering hall, it has to be a place that people could have enough from the Neiros. A person asked me to go to a hotel, they don't let him light in the room, only downstairs. Downstairs means a big, huge hall. Where should he light? So the truth is, what I told him is, Liesa says, you have no choice. But what he should do, I heard it from Tiva Goldstein once, before his wife wants to light, she should put on a light in the room they're staying, even if it has to be the bathroom light, that will give you light, and then try without a hefsek go downstairs, wherever they let you light, and make the bracha, light, and light with Neiros, make a bracha. So basically the bracha goes back on both, not only the Neiros, but on the light, and the light will burn the whole Shabbos. The light gives you plenty of access to shalom bayis that you need. Again, that's if there's no other choice. But l'chatchila, the place is the mokem achila, unless, of course, the mokem achila doesn't give the right setting as far as feeling the connection to the Neiros. An interesting question about mishtatef bepruta. So the truth is, this is a Gemara, and the Shulchan Aruch quotes it. When you have different people that want to be yotze, they're yotze with mishtatef bepruta. You can't give someone a pruta and be yotze the mitzvah of tefillin or matzah with him, right? There are some mitzvahs that you don't have to give a pruta. If someone puts up a mezuzah, you don't have to give him a penny. If someone puts up a maika in my house, I don't have to give him money. So the mishtatef bepruta, like a manashach, that's the uniqueness of Ner Shabbos. It's a chayvas haguf, but since it's a Ner Ishu Beisai, if you have shaychus to it, with a pruta, it's also good. You're not going to find a combination like this. Either you have a chayvas haguf, pruta doesn't help, or a chayvas habayis that anybody could do it. Mezuzah, anybody could do it. I could put a mezuzah on my neighbor's house and he's yaitza. He doesn't have to pay me money. But this is the uniqueness of Hilchais Ner Shabbos. Ner Ishu Beisa is a chayvas haguf. Now, let's say you have a few people, or if someone comes to the house, he wants mishtach to the pruta. So Rav Vazdan Chayla Gimel Simon Chafei points out, which we had the shaila, you see they have 200 bochurim eating together, And the 2 Neiros that they light does not cost 200 prutas. So even if each one's mishtatif, but they don't have a chelik in the Neiros. So Rav Azza says, which it's lav dafka pruta. You have to have a kinyan momini. But in Shulchan Aruch, they didn't have less than a pruta, so you chapta and pruta. But at the end of the day, you need a kinyan without actually being a pruta's worth of kinyan. So that's why typically, if a person wants to chip in, that's fine. Give a pruta, that's fine. But it's not practical. You're coming for the Shabbos. Oh, could I take my penny? The balabas won't want to take it. You feel uncomfortable giving it. But it's lav dafka mishtatif bepruta. You have to have a kinyan in the Neiros. So the balabas say, I'm giving you part of the Neiros, and you could be kinded. You could pick up the Neiros if you want, and it's certainly the same as actually mishtatif bepruta. The Paiskim say, Mr. Burr says beferish, you can't just say, oh, I'm part of it. But Dvarim Ba'alma doesn't help, and that this the Mr. Burr says regarding Chanukah, but it's huad in our case, stam being mishtatif just by verbally does not help, but if you make a kinyan of any sort, the kinyan is good. The halacha in Hilchas Daled Minim, which is even more challenging, the very end of Tov Reish Nun Vav wonders how regarding Daled Minim does it help? The kinyan of Mois, we know Chazal were oika that Mois ain't in kindness midrabanan. So he quotes a chiddush that regarding mitzvahs, Chazal wanted that the mitzvah should work, even though Mois ain't in kindness midrabanan, but for a mitzvah it does work even midrabanan. They want mafkir the kinyan of Mois by mitzvahs. So it's very mustava. The same is true regarding Ner Shabbos or Ner Chanukah, and since it's a makkah mitzvah, Chazal would say, as long as you have a part, you gave money midaraisa, even though midaban it's not kaina, but this person is still included in the mitzvah. Bochurim and Yeshiva are yotza, if they want to, let's say in the worst scenario, is the bochurim in the same diram, each one independent, basically, but lamaisa, they're living together. So even though they're basically on their own, and let's say in the old days where the yeshiva didn't give food, each one had to get their own meals, but they're not different than what the Mishnah discussed in Sif Kat and Lamid. A few balabatim that come together, they could be mishtatif. So Bochur could also do that. They chip in, they buy Neiros, and one bracha lights for all of them, and they're zicha all yotza, even though each one has a separate chayvas haguf. In a yeshiva, so I tell the Bochur, you're not the balabatim. You are guests, it's one happy family, so you don't have to even do mishtatef because it's like one happy family. It's the yeshiva giving Neiros for the entire mishpacha, and you're a part of that as well. Another point that I thought was kedai to mention is that, let's say a person is a guest, a fruma, and he wants to take part in the Neiros, but he's still stuck in traffic, he hopes to get there on time. What should he do? He can't be mishtatef b'pruta, he's not there, and he wants to be part of the Neiros. So it's not a problem at all, because the truth is there are other ways of being makna someone else. The balabas that gets that phone call goes to someone who's not part of his family. Ideally, to be makna something to someone else, use someone who's not part of, let's say, I'm the balabas, so I don't give the Neiros to my children or my wife, I give it to a neighbor. Please be kind of part of this for my guest. And that is a valid kinyan halacha. So the guest has a chelik of those Neiros. In Shin Samach Vav, Sif Yud, regarding being makna and erev to someone else, there are 2 days, but it seems that achatchila, you shouldn't be makna to somebody or someone else using your own family, because it's not going anywhere. I'm giving something to my own family. So if you want to be makna and erev to someone else, so use someone else to be kinded for that person. What also is pashit is that the maisa, stam bi diburim ba'alma, does not work. But what could be a lifesaver, sometimes a person has a problem, he knows that his guests are stuck, and some of his guests even have their own chiyuv, they're staying in a basement. So then he could just notify them, I'm being makna Neiros on your behalf, I'm giving you Neiros, and when I light, your yotze, your chayvas haguf, and your chayvas habayis, because they're light in the house, and that will definitely save the day for the guest that might not get back in time. Another point that I guess it's kedai to mention, because we had the shaila, a bacha that was mamuna in the yeshiva to light the Neiros. And one Friday he forgot. So this is a very sticky question. Because the MS is that the Ramah in the beginning of our Siman, Reish Tam Al Gimel, says an Isha that forgot, even an Oinus, unless it's an Oinus Gama, even an Oinus is Mechuyev to light a Knas Kol Yomeh, a very traumatic experience for a woman, but that is stated in the Ramah. So the Shail is, if a Bacha forgot to light, does he have to light? Does his wife have to light when he gets married? Does he have that Knas? Or how about a single person that's living alone who forgot? This is his Neiros. So what's interesting is that the Paiskim Madayik in the Lashon of the Ramah, which is the Lashon of Maril, Isha Sheshakcha. It seems that for some reason the Knas was only instituted on women. For a man, even though he lights, but there's no such Knas. Maybe because Ein L'Chabayel Chadusha, whatever the case is. But even though the man is the woman in this context, if he forgets there's no Knas, Kol Shkein, a Bacha that's just doing it because as a volunteer, Avada, he wouldn't have a Knas. We had a question, a fascinating question. The Bacha that came to me in the Yeshiva, he's lighting Neiros for the Yeshiva. Now he's Erev Yom Kippur. What does he do? Where does he light? And the dining room has no pshat because no one's there. So I told him, I thought the best place to light the Neiros in Beis Medrash. Don't forget, in Beis Medrash, Neiros are always necessary. Bochurim Kibdu Hashem, we light Neiros by the Chazan's Amid. The Paiskim say to light Neiros, a Ner Yartzeit on Yom Tiv, or an Ner Yiska on Yom Tiv is a Shaila, maybe Ner Betela. But if you light by the Amid, it's never extra. So light the Neiros in Beis Medrash someplace. Put it in a prominent place. That's safe, of course. I thought that's the most pashut of psak, and I talked about Yashvin, Ashri Ish, Gimel, Kuf, Lamed Aleph, that says just that. But I saw in this new Sefer Orchai Shabbos, in Amid Pei Gimel, he says, you can't light in the dining room, and lighting in the bedroom maybe is not enough of a chiyuv, so better just light without a bracha. And he doesn't even entertain the idea of lighting a Beis Medrash. I don't know why, if someone could tell me why, but I thought the perfect eitzah would be to light in Beis Medrash. Agav, for the Bochur that lights in Beis Medrash, I told him this is the once a year that you're going to do something different than you ever did. Because typically, when a Bochur lights, he's not in Makabel Shabbos or Yom Tiv. Let's say he lights on Erev Shavuos because he wants to have a mincha. Yom Kippur, you're already holding after mincha. And if you're ready for Yom Kippur, Chapra Nacha Mament Yom Kippur, be Makabel Yom Kippur with the Neiros. Then you have to, first of all, first light and then make the bracha, and then you'll have a bonus, you can make a Shechiyanu. We men, we have a problem making a Shechiyanu Yom Kippur. We don't have a kais, we don't have a Chefetz mitzvah of Neiros, so we do it in shul. But what would be better would be to do it with a mitzvah. That's why on Yom Kippur, the women are ahead of us, they make a Shechiyanu on the Neiros. So in this case, you have a bonus with your job, light like an Isha Neiros bracha, and say Shechiyanu, and of course remember that you're keeping Yom Kippur from now on, now it's really Yom Kippur. And last but not least, I would like to give you a beautiful ha'ara to think about. Again, this is something not for our halachos, but I'll give you enough to think about until the next mitzvah Hilchos Neiros. Imagine a person living in America, and now he went to Eretz Yisroel, Yom Tov, he's by the Rebbe, he's someplace in Eretz Yisroel, and he's not based, he's moving around, he doesn't have a kviyas, he just went to Rosh Hashanah, 2 days Rosh Hashanah, he came here Rosh Hashanah. What does he do about Neiros, Shabbos, or Yom Tov? In other words, he is in Eretz Yisroel, his wife's in America. Or let's say Fakert, he lives in Eretz Yisroel, he came to America for a Shabbos, whatever it is, a Simcha, a Biz, whatever it is, and it's hard for him to light Neiros. Could he be Yotze with his wife? Till now we said there's a psedin of Ishtik Gufa, you could be Yotze with your wife. Now we're talking about real long distance, a distance of 7 hours from America to Eretz Yisroel at a time. So Pashtas Ishtik Gufa works, right? But then again, the logistics of this are very daunting. Because how could he be Yotze? He's in Eretz Yisroel, his wife in America. Let's not forget, if he's in Eretz Yisroel, it's Shabbos 7 hours earlier. Where's his Neiros? When does his Neiros kick in? 1 a.m.? Is that good? Fakert is even more problematic. Because let's say he lives in Eretz Yisroel, and his wife lights Neiros Bisman, 4 o'clock during the winter. He, in America, is 7 hours earlier. So he's Friday morning. How could he be Yotze the mitzvah of Ner Shabbos Friday morning? But then I'll ask you a riddle to think about. How is it shaykh that a person that was nifta Erev Chanukah, he's 120 years old, he was nifta Erev Chanukah, was Yotze that year the mitzvah of Ner Chanukah? Can't be. Unless he had Tchis HaMeis, but I'll tell you how it could be. If he lives one place, and Lamaisa, his wife, is elsewhere. His house, Lamashal, in a case where his wife is in Eretz Yisroel, and he made a shliach light in my house, he's yotze with her. So his wife lights the bizman, but for him it's 7 hours earlier, it's Erev Chanukah. There are many poskim that hold he's yotze in their issue beisai. He was nifta Erev Chanukah, that's Neiros beisai. The teretz is there's some chiddush of Neiros beisai is to gegufay that even if you're far away, and maybe we could say Abzer also was out of a different time zone, and that's why he was yotze. And I saw Taka the Archa Shabbos is comfortable to say in both cases you yotze. Ahead, behind, Rabbi Yashiv made a chiluk, and he said if it's by you Shabbos, but your wife's lighting first 7 hours later, no, hechrashti. Eventually the Neiros will be attributed to you. You have a mitzvah. But when your wife lights your Erev Shabbos, that doesn't work. And some hold both are problematic, so think about that. I will talk to you all.
I would like to thank Rabbi Smith for the wonderful share. Rabbi said, give me a minute. Everybody knows about the tragedy of Klal Yisrael that went through over 700 bochurim, meaning a life, fell in one shot in Kalin and Givat Zev. Nisim Gluim, over 500 weren't injured at all, 30 feet tall, all fell together. Over 200 people were taken to the hospital with broken hands and feet. Rachmana litzlan. Baruch Hashem, most of them are getting better. There's one, Nebuchal Mona, that lost a husband and a child. And we really should make 200 campaigns for this, but Stalin is making one big, large campaign to cover Dalmana, to cover the tens of people that are still critical in the hospital. There's a list of 42 chaylim here. They still need big refuahs and operations, and forget about the hundreds of kids and they need therapy and all that, and everything is going to be covered. Every dollar is going to that. Rabbi said, we're asking everybody, this is a tragedy that since the Second World War never happened such a thing. But this is a Klal Yisrael tzara, and we're asking everybody to help for each choyle. Give $5 per choyle, $1,000, 200 choylem. Give $5 per choyle. There's a charity campaign. You can call Ignition Torah. We have putting up a page. Call our office at 718-851-8651 or email to ist@yeshivanet.com. You want to take a chelik in this big mitzvah. Mishtatav. Klal Yisrael is doing tshuva. Every shul is speaking about it. Every Rebbe, just spoke to Diane Donner from London. The Skilana, every Rebbe is speaking about it. This, after so many tzaras we had this year with Maron, with COVID, and with Eretz Yisroel, there's a time of tshuva and a time of tefillah. But on top of that, tzedakah, and especially for this tzedakah, for these people, tzaddikim, the bochurim, the kabbonos of Klal Yisrael, we have to help them to get healthy, to be able to make shidduchim, to be able to be normal, to be just push it for every dollar is going straight through a bunch of rabbanim will be on top of it in Eretz Yisroel. We have a credit card machine over here right now if you want to give, and in this chus, everybody should protect all of us, and all of you, and all of your kids. We're going to the summer, we all need big shmira. And this chus, give as much as you can. Give the minimum $1 per choyle, $200. Give $1,000. You have a big schus in helping Saidat Tevrochen Almon and the Yosim, and Sai all the hundreds of cholim that needs to be helped. And this chus, the Yebisha Shavach Monas on all of us, have a Shmira Leonim and Hashemayim. Everybody should be protected and have refuahs and Yeshuas. We shouldn't have any tzaras by anybody, by any kabbalah in Klal Yisrael. We should have only simchas and psuras tovis, Lona L'Chol Yisrael. Amen. Aber gaan we kashem rot gesprochen sagen soll für gehebrum teil mit so schnell mal eine Kopf mein Zirka jagdel teuer wie ade. Seek him shortly. Kaddish.